Thank you, Madam Speaker. After that last speech, I'm not sure if we're here talking about the Queen and the monarchy or debating the motion that's presented to us about the Income Tax Act and the Governor-General's salary. But either way, I'm here to stand to speak in favour of Motion 313, which calls on the government to change the Income Tax Act so that the Governor-General's salary becomes subject to the general tax regime. And let's give some background to this motion. It is worth pointing out why the Governor-General does not currently pay income tax. The tax exemption dates back to an old understanding that the British government was not able to tax the Crown, and this tradition was passed on to the Commonwealth countries such as Canada. However, in recent years, this tradition has been challenged. In 1993, the Queen agreed to voluntarily opt in to the income tax regime in Britain. In 2001, Madam Speaker, the Australian Governor-General became subject to the Australian income tax regime, and New Zealand followed suit just last year. The private income of the Governor-General, such as his pension and income investment, is already subject to income tax. And as such, the argument that the government should not tax the Governor-General is tenuous at best, Madam Speaker. Similarly, the lieutenant governors of all the provinces are subject to the Canadian income tax regime, and as such, taxing the salary of the Governor-General would meet national and international precedents. Madam Speaker, I would like to take a quick opportunity here to pay tribute to the great work our current Governor-General, David Johnston, does. Mr. Johnston was born in my hometown of Sudbury, and I know the people across Sudbury are very proud of Mr. Johnston's achievements. Prior to being named as the Governor-General, Mr. Johnston served as the Dean of the University of Western Ontario Law School, as the Principal and Vice-Chancellor of McGill University, and then as the President of the University of Waterloo. And, like many Sudburyans, Mr. Johnston is a hockey fan, and he himself is a very talented hockey player who captained the Harvard varsity hockey team and who was twice named to the All-American hockey team. Madam Speaker, and the Governor-General has in recent weeks been a strong proponent for further investigating concussions in hockey, which is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart as the role of NDP sport critic. So when great Canadian athletes like Sidney Crosby spend months on the sidelines, and when sport headlines are dominated by who is not playing rather than those who are, something is amiss, Madam Speaker. Sports concussions are a serious issue that not only superstars but amateur young athletes from coast to coast to coast also affect. And I'm glad that inspiring Canadians like the Governor-General are happy to go on the record about this important issue, which our government seems too happy to ignore. The point I wish to make here, Madam Speaker, is that it's not incompatible to hold positive views of the Governor-General and to believe that his or her income should be subject to income tax. This is not about the Governor-General per se. Rather, at the heart of the matter, this is a question about fairness. The revenue that the government will receive from taxing the Governor-General's income in the terms of the federal budget is very, very small. We know that taxing the Governor-General's income isn't an answer to paying down the government debt. But, Madam Speaker, what this revenue represents is worth far more the dollar value. It represents making sure that all Canadians pay their fair share. I believe in a progressive tax structure, as do all members of the official opposition. And in my model of a progressive tax system, there is no room for an individual to make $138,000 a year tax-free. This is not a new idea, Madam Speaker. Since the 35th Parliament convened in 1994, and following the Queen's opt-in to the British income tax system, a number of bills and motions dealing with this exact topic have been introduced in Parliament. And yet neither the Liberal nor the Conservative government since that time have seen fit to implement the simple amendment to the Income Tax Act, which would close the loophole, Madam Speaker. Canada needs a progressive tax system, and that has been undermined by both Liberals of the past and the Conservatives. Far too many breaks go to the well-off and the influential. Unfortunately, I feel that this Thursday's budget will only continue this trend. This government's failure to address the concerns of average, hard-working Canadians is something that needs to be addressed. While this motion in itself will not change the government's misdirection, by passing this motion, Parliament can send a message to the government that this is time for an economic strategy that puts hard-working Canadian families first. Ultimately, this motion, in my mind, is symbolic. It is a symbol that during hard economic times, when Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, when young Canadians are finding it increasingly hard to find jobs, when big businesses are getting big tax breaks, but families can't get a break on their bills, that we, as parliamentarians, are here for them. And that we are going to do something, Madam Speaker, to help them. That we believe in a tax system that is fair and focused on improving equality and giving a break to people who deserve it, not to people with friends in the right places. In December of last year, Madam Speaker, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development released a report which stated that since the mid-1990s, inequality in Canada has been on the rise. How is my time, Madam Speaker?
I regret to say I must interrupt the honourable member, but when this item reappears on the orders of the day, he will have 4 minutes left to complete his intervention.